My name's Monk Rowe. I'm very pleased to have Daryl Sherman with me this morning, pianist and vocalist and owner of something that a lot of musicians would be envious of.
Really?
It's not your piano, but
No.
although I wouldn't mind having that piano, but really what I'm referring to is you have a steady gig.
Oh, oh, wow. A lot of people have a steady gig, but yes. Um, and I started having steady gigs when I moved here. And it wasn't until later that I understood what a one-nighter was about. I got spoiled very early on. But if you want me to tell you about this gig, it's kind of funny that it should come to this, but I couldn't be more grateful. It is a building atrium on Park Avenue between 52nd and 53rd, and all of those buildings are banks and usually really high-end investment companies. And then restaurants, but mostly very upscale takeout places with fancy cartons that you can take your food back to the office or sit on the low table and chairs that my building, Park Avenue Plaza, offers. The history to the music there is thanks to Barry Singer, who is the proprietor, I like that word, of the most charming and sophisticated bookstore, Chartwell, and they specialize in Winston Churchill. And he is himself, quite an intellect and a real New Yorker who loves jazz and has befriended so many great jazz musicians like Dick Katz, and he's had a piano, the solo piano, for well over 20 years. The last person before me was Chuck Foles, who was an elegant gentleman and a marvelous pianist and an intellect. I think from the Midwest originally, playing lots of stride piano and Louis Armstrong. And I think the thing he loved the most was playing with Doc Cheatham down in the Village regularly, up a steady gig, I think on Sundays. Chuck Foles.
Yeah. Is it a jazz gig, or do you play to what you perceive an audience
Yes.
at any? Okay.
Yes.
Isn't that's an interesting process to look around the
Yes.
room and you see somebody,
Yeah.
and it's almost like I think I know what they want to hear.
Or should hear.
Or should. Well said.
I started playing as much Fat Swaller as I could. And I have a few things that I knew Dick well stood, and I know enough about stride playing to know that I could never pull it off. It's just too many notes and too much precision. But he's later on was really getting into the American songbook, and he brought songbooks with him. I used to go hear him a lot, and Sinatra, and particularly in this day and age, post-pandemic and whatever, it's kind of a challenge insofar as just bringing people back to the office during the day. So many people are working from home. And, clearly there are people who are still in the office, but not as many as there used to be. And you just never know and the reason I didn't even realize how many atriums there were, particularly in this area, that had a piano. I guess for the reason that it's the owner's way of giving back to the city because they got a tax break. to build that building. And there's a public restroom. They've got a Starbucks. They do provide some table and chairs, and in some cases, a live person. But what I do now is, as you said, kind of case out who's there and just the vibe. Even though I start at 12, I start with, "Oh, what a beautiful morning." And I go to, "I love being here with you," and all the things I do. For the most part, these people are so young now. They don't really know from Peggy Lee necessarily, but I do notice that they know from the vibe or just something lilting. And I'm not singing. At first, this was kind of the hardest part for me. I've done solo piano gigs, and I've done long-term hotel gigs, 14 years at the Waldorf, on and off, probably about the same amount of time at the Sheridan Center. And I know when you can just sit and be a jazz player, and I know when you have to play to the audience, which is fine because it's a way of relating and building relationships, and it's the best way to build a repertoire.
What do you
And
do?
now I'm having fun. I start playing when I see people walking through. Walk right in.
Nice. What do you do if someone comes up to you and requests something from Kinky Boots or Taylor Swift or
I just mentioned to someone that I'm at a loss, I have to admit. There's just, even older shows, there's just something, probably one of the most enduring Broadway shows is Wicked. And I saw it, and I did understand why it should endure. Because the kids can connect, and it is interesting to learn what the Wicked Witch used to be, and she wasn't really wicked, and I loved it. And I've heard the song a zillion times. There are songs like that from these pop shows I cannot remember. They just sound all the same. I can play 2 or 3 bars, but sometimes that's enough.
yes,
As long
that's
as I
right.
hear something they recognize.
That's right. And you can sort of improvise in the fashion and make it at least 24 bars or something. Just
Yeah,
keep playing a lick from the tune.
I play some. I mean, I studied classical music. I was not a music major, but I studied piano all through college, and my shining hour was a couple of Chopin etudes and scherzos. And when I was in college, because the best thing that happened to me was a practice room in a building away from anything to distract me. And I can't believe that I was able to practice and learn and memorize these things. But after that, I really knew, and even my teacher knew, that Beethoven, Bach, and I were not wed, and that I was much more into Ellington. But I still think it was the most important thing I could do, and I love playing them, and I pull out a few things to do, the Gershwin preludes, and now I've really gotten, I figure I can do this because, I'm very sad about, well, I'm nervous. In a few days, I will say a really gulp age. I'm in good company because we baby boomers are very special, but nonetheless, it is wigging me out. So,
Well, you're going to be playing on your birthday, right?
What?
You're going to be playing on your birthday, right?
Yes, I booked a gig at Mesro last year, and it was a mistake because no matter how many years I've played, and just should be just like the most natural thing to do, I still get nervous, maybe even more nervous organizing the music, making the last minute choices. What were you thinking, Daryl? You can't play that song. Things like that. And even more important, on my birthday, food. It's a tradition, Peking duck. And here's another issue. We're going from issues to issue. Hard to find a Chinese restaurant since the pandemic. They started to leave, well, come on, Chinese restaurants, Wuhan. The people were already scared to death. And the main thing in all of the restaurants, not enough help. They don't have anyone who wants to stay late. Yeah. And that was the problem for my birthday last year. I could not find a place, including the Peking Duck House in the Village. And there's one in my neighborhood on 53rd Street. So I had to completely change my plans, order takeout, and have it at a friend's house. And they delivered the Peking duck and all that stuff. But you know what? It was fun. It was nice, but it's not the same. You have to be there.
How do you keep a steady gig? I think that's just basically my question. Or how?
Well, maybe sometimes
maybe I can turn it around.
By first of all, by getting a steady gig. Like here's the case in point, the Waldorf. And I remember the day so well. I have to get this in. 94, I was doing my first show with Marion McPartland, recording at the studio down in the West 30s. And I was younger then, so I wasn't as crazy and nervous as I am now. So I did that, but also just before I left, I got a call from an agent who booked the Waldorf, asking me if I could go in and play. Apparently the piano was in the middle of the lobby at that point. And I said, okay, sure, fine. So after I did her show, and it was the first one where her format, of course, there's two pianos, she talks, we gab a little bit, and then she makes it sound like we're doing it like just on the cuff, but of course, so what should we do for the second song? It's very organized. Well, not the actual playing, but at least the order. So after all that, I go to the Waldorf and I play in the lobby, the Cole Porter piano. I'm not even sure if I sang because I don't even remember if they had a microphone. Maybe they did. Come to find out that a very good singer pianist, I knew, a colleague, whatever she did, it's one of those things where the general manager had walked by, noticed her, and then gave the directive, she's got to go. Now she was a bit kooky. She wore hats and she had long nails and a little eccentric. Whatever it was, I feel bad for her, although she moved south and she did very well after that. But I got hired. It was like a paid audition, and then I was there for 14 years. So to answer your actual question, a combination of things. You maybe prepare and bring some things in that you want to play, and maybe something you're going to read, depending on if no one's paying attention, that's a good time to do that. And you try to have some prep on who this crowd is. They're probably at like the Sheridan Center. I was right across the street from the show Cats. That was, the theater district. And I actually told the actress who sang it every night, I said, I sing this song 8 times in a 5-hour gig every night. Midnight. So yeah, you've got to be prepared for that. It depends on the place. In the Waldorf, I was up in the cocktail terrace. That's what they called it, and it was the main entrance of the beautiful Art Deco lobby. Who knows what it's going to be like? It has been many years now, just in construction. The rumor is it's planning to open again soon, but during that time, I was actually right playing, and below was the main entrance on Park Avenue. People would come in and go through that way. And then the Lexington Avenue entrance, people might come through. Some would stay, but it was a really good place to go across. Particularly if you're going to Grand Central Station, you go through the Waldorf and then you get to the stop. So I've had a relationship just with people coming either from Lexington to Park, looking up and waving, or Park to Lexington. I had a relationship with the staff, everything from the bartenders, some of the managers, and more interesting, the people who were there in security, or someone she had the most gorgeous face, who was polishing the railing of the staircases, brass railing and stuff, every day. I mean, it was such a whole other world that I loved.
I know what you're talking about. It's interesting to sit in a place for 4 hours or something, and who watches their hands when they play? Not many people. So you can look around the room and just make these observations. And
oh yeah, we piano players observe everything, and we're ready. In the old days, when the mob owned a lot of the clubs, which is really something that we miss in this business. Those clubs are gone, like Jilly's, that's where I started, Jimmy Weston's, and all over the country there were always places like that. But you also knew to duck when somebody dangerous was coming in, right under the piano.
Don't shoot the piano player.
But at the Waldorf, I would have a big mixture. A lot of Europeans. At the time I was there, the Waldorf had a deal with Cunard. And at the time, I guess it was the Queen Elizabeth was docking, and most of them stayed at the Waldorf. And that was really helpful to me because once I started performing more in England, it was really a nice way to see them and have them help me to fill the audience. But from all countries, and local New Yorkers coming in and knowing, and even visitors. There was a plaque that was engraved that Cole Porter lived in the Waldorf Towers, and he wrote some of America's most popular songs and blah, blah, blah. And I always tell this, people would come in sometimes and they look at that. It was really a little bit of a tourist attraction. Look at me and look at the sign again and say, well, is he going to come down and play? And then I'd have to tell them the bad news. So I didn't always want to tell him he died. So I'd tell him he's playing a bar mitzvah. I would have fun with it.
Okay, I want to take you back a bit, and I'm going to do that by seeing if you can name this tune. All right, I'll give it my best rendition. Da 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 dee.
Oh, someone else maybe near your heart. Interesting that you should do that one. It's not necessarily a staple that I have played throughout, and I'm not even sure I can recall that many people asking for it, but it was a song that I sang a lot in my home in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and I probably heard it on the radio or on the many recordings that my father would play. My father, Sammy, was a trombonist, and although he was mainly working in our family restaurant, on the weekends, he usually would have some kind of a steady weekend gig with his band. And that was my first most important mentorship. And I was told I could sing before I could talk. And we didn't have a real piano, but there was some keyboard that he had that I started to fiddle with. But he then encouraged me when we got, and I used to call it a junkie upright, to play. This is probably even before I was taking lessons. And he always would write out some songs that he would play on his gigs. They were always standards. And he would write the melody line and chords, although the melody was written in the trombone bass line. But I don't think that was one of them. The one that I remember, and I never sing it, it's too rangy, is I'll Get By.
Oh, I see.
I'll get by as long as I have you. And I didn't know anything from Billie Holiday at that time. But the songs I did, and once in a while, I sang it. I knew it. I liked it.
Well, I
Can't
should
tell you
tell
where, I don't even remember. Who do you like singing it? Because who had the big kid on it? I don't even know.
I don't remember, but the reason I have to give you my in that a fellow named Bob Jacobson wrote an article about you. And he did in the
He's from
Woonsocket
Providence.
publication.
Oh, right.
Remember that? It was some
Oh,
years
yeah.
ago. And
Well, I
so
remember.
that's where I
And he
learned that.
mentioned once in a while?
Yes, he did. He also mentioned a couple other tunes that you sang before, as you said, before you could really talk. So I'll send you a link to the article. You should read
Thanks.
about
I'm
yourself.
sure he'd sent it to me. Is he a fan of yours?
Well, he is a
He
acquaintance
lives in the
helping out
DC
with these
area?
interviews. He lives in,
Oh,
yeah. He does some proofreading for us and very knowledgeable.
oh.
Yeah. So I was wondering, you almost casually mentioned that you're more nervous now than
Uh-oh.
when you were young. And
Yeah.
when I think about the names that I've seen that people that you've met and associated with, I remember feeling nervous around those kinds of people because you just felt like these folks are on another level, and I want to make sure that I don't sort of do anything wrong. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
Milt Hinton and that crowd of people just seemed to have the kind of character that you wanted to emulate.
Well, that time, that was in the 70s. And I had just moved here to 49th Street, and I was so lucky because two of the best places for me as a singer and pianist were right within reach. That one on 55th, just off 3rd Avenue, and then the other one, Jimmy Weston's, where I did get to work. But I believe Gil Weast is still alive in his 90s, living out in Santa Monica. He was quite a character. Not a kissy, huggy person at all, but he had one of the best clubs going. And it was in the period of, I didn't realize it at the time, but the Mad Men. He had that kind of crowd to come in and just eat the food and pay for the entertainment, whether they cared about who was playing or not. And then he had all these jazz all-stars, and I sitting at the bar with a bartender who used to work on 52nd Street, already getting my vibe and taking care of me and always having a check near the one drink that I would have so the boss would think that I was still drinking, and allowing me to sit there all night. And eventually, for whatever reason, when Gil Weast saw me there and he heard I was a singer and pianist, he let me. Oh, actually, it didn't just come from Gil Wiest. It was Dave McKenna who worked there. So first, I mean, before I met and got to know Milt, it was Dave McKenna, my own hometown hero, who I'd never met. I was very close with his family, particularly his sister, who sang with my father's band. And we are still very close. And Dave, just by his nature in knowing my dad, actually asked me if I wanted to sit in on the second set. I did. Gil heard me and allowed me when there was somebody who might be, who was embracing enough to want to ask me. So that started it. But Dave introduced me. All the musicians in town came to hear him through the week or two, however long he was there. All of them. I met John Bunch. I don't think Milt was playing with Dave, but Milt would be there. And that's how I got to know him. He was working with somebody else. I can't remember who worked with who, but Red Norvo.
When you sat in, were you sitting in as a pianist
No, singer.
or both as a singer? So you were
Singer, yeah.
singing and Dave was accompanying.
Oh, yeah.
Which leads me to something I wanted to make sure we talk about, the sometimes mysterious art of accompaniment and what makes a good accompanist. I was listening to a video of you singing "I'm Shadowing You," and it occurred to me what a wonderful thing it is to be able to accompany yourself, because you can do like instant arrangements.
Thank you. Yes. But it's a wonderful thing, but it's also, I'm now too easily into that in everything I do. It's all of the moment. And being at that daily place where I have the freedom to play, a Beatles song and then Art Tatum something or whatever. Same thing, and I never play anything the same way twice. So I'm reinforcing that, and I don't think I'm going to get too structured anymore. But yes, and it took a while because I really didn't hear that much growing up in Woonsocket. I've heard some great musicians, and I sang with my dad's band, which consisted of a great guitarist. His name was Alvin Pulley. And his regular keyboard was an accordion player who is also a professor at Providence College, and he taught Old English.
Old English.
Chaucer. But he also was not playing Lady of Spain. He was one of the first to get those all those newfangled things that the accordions were able to do, like a computer, almost like an electric piano. So he had one of those, and he wasn't a jazz player, but he could play really good harmony on the accordion, and that's what I got used to singing. And later on, my father encouraged me to accompany myself and sing with myself. So I've had both.
Do you think you accompany significantly differently when you accompany another singer?
I love doing that, actually, with good singers. And I am careful. I mean, I know Mike Renzi and all the people out there now that people use. But I pride myself in thinking that I know to stay out of their way. I don't have the chops to play in every key, faking it and playing a lot of full figures all the time. But for a singer and for accompanying myself, that's not mostly what you want. Sometimes it's nice, lots of arpeggios and things. And I think even fine pianists that I've heard don't realize that they should stay out of the singer's register. If I hear the tone quality or where in the song they're singing, I'll go up and I'll add something there. I actually think of myself more on the keyboard as a painter. I don't have, I'm never gonna, stun anybody with my amazing technique flying up and down, but it's the choices you make. And I'm into colors, and I'm finding even more now that I'm playing this piano, and it's not a Steinway, it's called a Young Chang. It's a Korean piano, and they're trying to be a little less expensive of a Yamaha, which is less expensive than a Steinway. The wood is heavier and clunky, but this particular piano has a very lovely ringing sound, which is perfect for that building. And I'm loving how I can paint and play something up there for a minute and come down. And I see that people respond. So in accompanying a singer, also I have the advantage over even some pianists who do accompany singers, because they don't always know the words. That I do know the words, and I know what they mean. And even if the singer doesn't know what it means yet, I can pull them into that direction.
What a wonderful.
So I do like to play for singers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've noticed recently with the advent of iReal Pro, where people are playing, you can get the chords to just about any song you want on your phone, but it's only the chords. It doesn't have the melody.
Oh God, I know.
So if you're accompanying a singer, unless you really know this song, you don't know what pitches they're singing. And I find that really sort of false.
Well, don't get me started on this whole century. Because I'm living in it. I'm glad I'm here. I make the best of it. I try to get into the advanced things, but I really don't get it. Although I do appreciate the technology, and I appreciate the skill that it takes to manipulate it and what they can do. But I am on the fence. I am seeing more and more people, even my age, using them. My bass player, one of my steady bass players, Boots Mallison, wonderful, wonderful musician, says that some of his, he calls them accounts, some of his accounts hand out not music. They hand out an iPad just for this musician for the show. I mean, like 5 iPads they bring to the gig. I thought, oh my God. But I remember this sticks in my mind, going back home to Rhode Island and singing with one of my quote mentors, not as well known as Mike Renzi. He, in his way, totally different. He's much more of a groove player, like Junior Mance. He loved Junior Mance.
Oh, Junior Mance.
He was like that, but very flexible. And he helped me get started before I left for New York, and helped me first he invited me to sing with his trio right in the middle of Newport, and then helped me to find a couple of gigs where I was singing and playing piano by myself. Anyway, years later, I'm on a gig with him. They're always doing a special jazz Sunday or so, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly, it wasn't an iPad, not yet, but just a phone. And he was reading the chord changes. And I said to myself, Mac Krupkala never needed to do that. Never. I was spoiled, even coming to New York, calling us a well-known standard, not in the original key, and most of them could do it. They weren't shuffling through their phones.
I played at a jam session the other day, and I could tell the audience needed to hear something familiar. So I called Watermelon Man. And these musicians I was playing with all got out their phones.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, for Watermelon Man, you need, I mean, don't get, like you said.
Don't get me started. No, I could just go on and on about this.
Yeah.
And yet, here I am already thinking. I saw an ad that if you get a better iPhone, we'll throw in an iPad. So I'm thinking about it.
Have you ever had an instance where you really want to give some advice? And I'll give an example. I've done a lot of restaurant playing and so forth, and I've had circumstances where someone would come up and say, "Do you mind if I sing a tune with you?" And you go, okay. First of all, it's like, well, what would you like to sing? And they'll go, oh, well, I don't know. What do you know? And then, oh boy. And then, or they'll say, I'll say, how about Summertime? They go, oh, okay. And you go, well, what key do you like? And they go, well, here's my first note. Some.
Oh, yeah. I guess all right. You're right. It's universal. It's universal.
Don't you want to say something to them like,
my father, all those years ago, when I was like 8 and 9 or 12, don't be, don't be like all those people who and just did exactly what you said. Amateurs. Don't be an amateur. You need to know your keys. You then tell them you're gonna do it in this key, and you're gonna go back to the bridge, and then you're gonna take it out. He showed me all the terms, and Cookie. He called everybody Cookie, but I was number one Cookie. Cookie, I must talk to you about your vibrato. You're getting a nanny. Oh, he should hear me now.
You're getting a nanny?
But that stuff still happens. And you know what? I am the most exposed now in this afternoon gig. There's no sign. I could have asked them to put a sign here with my name, and maybe I will. Now that I've had this interview and I'm going to be famous, I'm going to put a sign on the piano. But first, people come up. Oh, isn't this nice? They have a piano here. Can I play?
Ooh.
It happens so much. And that's part of the reason they have security people around, although of course there's never one when you need it. They just happen to pass. And they say, they don't think, they just think, oh, isn't this nice? How often are you here? You don't get paid for this, do you? So you bet your ass I do.
Yeah, they might think that, oh, this piano here is for people walking through to play.
And then I say, maybe I should have a little promo that says where I've worked for 50 years. It happens. Yeah, okay. It happens.
So I know you know Nikki Parat.
Oh.
And I want to read.
He went down under, back to Aussie.
Yes, she did. I miss her. She's played up here on occasion. And I want to read a very brief quote from my interview with Nikki. And this was when she was younger. And she said, I was so conscious of being taken seriously. There was one instance when I got called for a gig and they said, is this Nick Parat? I said, well, actually, it's Nikki. And the person said, a bass player? Yeah, Nikki Parat. Click. Phone hangs up. Have you ever had that happen to you?
Oh, sure. Well, a lot of people. First of all, I I was seeing her more often in the days when Arbors had those wonderful jazz uh, parties in Florida. And then, of course, she moved to New York, and we've done some gigs together. And she was just starting to sing then. And I feel so complimented now because she said, "Oh, Daryl, you're a real singer." Well, look what's happened. Look what happened to her. For just, well, because of the name, particularly if they don't, oh, here's a good story. Here's a good story. One summer in the 80s, Dave McKenna, first of all, was playing at the Copley Plaza, which was the best gig. He was playing solo. They gave him a room upstairs. The bathtubs were big. He loved it. He was in heaven. However, he wanted to have a summer off to play in the Cape for whatever reason. And I got asked to play. I can't believe it. Even now, I can't believe it. And I was there for at least a couple of summers, but okay. First of all, it's Boston. That was a busy hotel then. And it was Dave's room, and the bar was filled with, I could see I know the type. A lot of them were Madison Avenue types in New York at the bar talking amongst themselves. And I was at to the entrance of the room, and I go to it like the side part of the bar before I'm starting. And I hear the discussion. So, who the hell is this guy, Daryl, somebody or other, who thinks he can play Dave's piano? What nerve! And I swear to you, it's true. This is how it happened. And I'm just standing there. So I wait, they're going on, and then finally I just go gulp. And I just walk to the piano and I sit down and start playing, and the room is silent. And it took a while. They wouldn't even come near me. But you know what? I managed to win some of them over, and they knew it when they knew that I adored Dave, that we had so much, family in common. And lucky for me, one of his staples, because that was what's so wonderful about Dave McKenna. He could play any jazz song, and he could play standards, and he could play Bobby Short songs or any, oddball things. Sand in my shoes.
I pulled out a quote from him from his interview that he said, "I'm more of a song player than a jazz player."
Yes. And I cry when I think about it. He can just play 2 measures of an introduction. Just that, maybe 3. And he is already inside the song. And yes, that's what makes him so extraordinary. And just, he didn't brag about it. It was just who he was. Just who he was. All of those songs. Dream Dancing. Yeah. So anyway, as far as Daryl is concerned, it still happens.
Do you have a sense of, especially on this type of gig you're doing now, that people are going to enjoy what you play more if you make the melody predominant, like they're used to hearing it sung? And the reason I ask that is I've heard some piano players who will take a song like Spanish Eyes, which has a certain groove to it, and they'll just like be so first rubato and then florid and all this stuff until it doesn't even matter that the song is Spanish Eyes.
I understand what you're saying. In my case, in this particular venue where people are just walking in and out, sometimes there's hardly anybody there, I could do, 50 courses of what I think is Spanishized, but no one else would recognize it. And sometimes it's just as well because it just sounds nice, and it's elevator music, it really is. But in general, I definitely try. And actually, here is another, secret or a confession. Most of my performances through the years is singing along with my playing, maybe playing solos here and there, which I would enjoy, but it's still the singing. So this is, now it's been over 2 years of just piano. And I really didn't give it that much thought when I took the job and started playing. And I start playing all these songs that I know, and then suddenly every once in a while, it's like my fingers are like going to a note higher, that my fingers are just going to wrong notes. And I'm realizing, Daryl, you never play the melody in all these years. If you're accompanying yourself. So number one, give yourself a break. Don't feel bad about it, because it's amazing that you can do it. Actually, I do amaze myself. And then I play at all different keys.
Yes, I noticed.
And mostly my fingers are doing more for me than any other part of my body right now.
Oh, that's a good statement. That's right. Your fingers almost sense, okay, I know this has got to go up the scale, or there's this little leap here.
You just go there. I don't
does.
know how it happens. I swear to you, I don't know. It's divine intervention. But it has then made me aware of that. So I'm using this to play all of these and try them in different keys, and all of a sudden realizing, well, I always played it in that key because my vocal range, it suited that. But oh, listen to how beautiful the melody sounds in this register, because I'm a painter, So I'm having a good time, and it's I'm at this gulp age, but I'm not dead, and I'm still learning and loving it.
Well, that says a lot. Do you like to listen back to your own recordings?
At first, no, and now I'm glad you asked, because I'm not much for I want Alexa. I don't want her to hear that her Alexa. You know what I mean?
I do.
Okay, and I say, Alexa, play Daryl Sherman. Almost every night now, because I'm realizing I'm getting royalties. And I have to confess, I'm astounded. Wow, because it goes on and on all night, and it's never repeating anything. So it really makes me
It's a
feel,
bit of self-affirmation.
wow, this is my legacy. And it sound, well, of course, the sound that I have for that is not a very clear sound. So, it could sound a lot better. But just the fact of all the songs and the different musicians that I've played with, and when you hear it all mixed up, I have to tell you, it's really adding life to me.
I'm so happy to hear you say that.
I can't believe it. But the other problem is, everything that I'm really excited about has already happened.
One never
What am I
knows.
gonna
do
do? Well, no, I mean, I'm still playing jazz clubs. I just in April, I went to my bottom file cabinet, got out my Mildred Bailey music, and remembered that I had done a very special event in her home state of Washington, Spokane and Tico, which is a tribal lands where she grew up. And I asked Lauren Schoenberg, are you familiar with him? I knew
very
you
much.
would be. Very important in our jazz world. he's so busy teaching and conducting bands. He's yeah, and he was Bobby Short's music director at one time, but I talked him into doing that with me, and not only playing alto, no, excuse me, tenor sax, which he doesn't get to do as often, but he's a marvelous pianist. So he did both. He played piano for me. I also played as well. You know, that took some doing, just figuring out how to get on and off the piano bench, but we did it. And I had James Cirillo on guitar and Boots Mellison on bass, and it was so wonderful to give those songs a dust off and get to talk about her a little bit. And on the opening night, from the state of Washington, I think probably her only living relative, her niece, came, Julia Rinker, who was the daughter of Al Rinker, who was one of the rhythm boys with Bing Crosby for Paul Whiteman.
Wow.
Yeah. And she got up and talked a little bit, and she sang a song that her father had written.
Yeah.
So it was so special.
You know, you answered a question of mine. I was going to ask, in your memory, what comes through as one of your best gigs ever and one of your worst gigs ever. So you did talk about who's this Daryl person that's going to play Dave's piano? And then you just mentioned that wonderful gig. And so I think you answered the question. I didn't even ask it.
Wow, no, but I've had steady jobs, anonymous type jobs in restaurants where I would meet people. It's fruit. Oh, sorry. It's meeting people and bonding. In some cases, they've become like best friends or kind of like family. And even traveling, I got to go to England and started performing at Pizza on the Park in London, which was a place that De Blossom Deary played, and Dave Frischberg, and lots of jazz people, some singers. And the ownership of that, let's say the circle of places became the Pizza Express Live. And they have a couple of other places in London where jazz musicians play, and one called the Pheasantry, which is a little bit more singer friendly. So I'm going to be there in September. But during the 90s, when I had these recordings coming out on arbors and things were still a little easier to travel, and they had more jazz societies around the country. Britain is, you know, I mean, they love, particularly trad jazz, although they have great musicians there for everything. But I started developing what I was calling my UK Nooks and Crannies tour. And I prided myself on playing places that even Brits never heard of. How do you like Cleethorpes, which is up north? Sounds like a prehistoric animal.
It does.
Or I played, I'm going to be going back there in Wales. There's a lovely little area on the sea called Mumbles.
Oh,
And I met some of these people when they came to the Waldorf, and some have been enduring relationships.
so when you go into a nook and cranny to play, there's a moment where you walk up to the piano and you go, see what it's going to sound like.
Well, it's gotten worse because at least at that time, most of the places did have a piano of sorts. Sometimes it was an upright, but it was good or okay. But now it's mostly keyboards,
Oh,
and
okay.
they just assume that that's what it's going to be. And it's kind of hurt me because I don't. If you wouldn't ask me about my worst gig, I'll tell you about my worst gig, which was a couple of summers ago It was a birthday party for someone who knew a friend of mine, a fan of mine, who suggested, oh, you'll love Daryl Sherman. She can do jazz and she can play all your Broadway songs and stuff. It was at their home, a big estate in New Jersey, and they didn't have a piano. Well, so I thought, okay, I'm going to have to learn how to do this. So maybe I should just experiment and try. So I rented a keyboard, which is still heavy, and you have to have a sound system as well. But fortunately, in this case, I didn't have to lug that, but just lugging the keyboard and all the accoutrements was heavy. And she said, oh, don't worry, there'll be people to help you with. Nobody to help me. First, they wanted it outside, so it was starting to rain, but I set it up. Someone had to help me. And then they went inside, and this is an old house with little rooms with small doorways. and I'm not used to lugging it around. I was absolutely livid. And I don't know what she was thinking, because she wanted me to play it. She wanted like a Broadway medley. So I went to all the trouble of writing up names of songs for sing-along and copying them and making them pretty and everything. And I had like 50 of them. Well, what happened, I got into just an area that the piano would fit, but people were all seated in different rooms, and there was nobody in my room. And the best part, someone finally saw that I was just fit to be tied. A very tall part of the wait staff, big woman. Would you like some help? Oh, I said, you're my angel. I said, here, take the other side of this. It's very heavy. She said, just stand aside. She picks the piano up over her head like this and just walks through the room.
That's a strong angel.
So that, but I've never been, I mean, I've had, war situations probably, but still, that was one that I was just so angry at myself for taking it, and angry about the woman who hired me and her sons and everything, who were just so disregard anything. So I played anyway, even though they couldn't hear me. And at the end, towards when we were ready to leave, I give the 50 copies to the to the birthday girl, who just kind of looks down. She says, well, maybe next year. Never again.
My phone's going to be busy next year.
Never again.
Yeah. I want to wrap up with a question that might be worthwhile for up-and-coming musicians. Most of us have lists of players to call when we get a gig and we have to assemble a group. And what kind of behavior, either musical or otherwise, would make you move someone down your list as opposed to up your list?
That's an interesting question. Rarely would it happen. Maybe something that was treasonous. Like, I mean, it hasn't happened, but if someone was trying to hustle a gig, I don't know. If someone got terribly drunk and passed out or did something, I might have to be, I don't know.
Well, musically,
Ed, or just someone who was clearly not getting my groove and not, but then again, I'm not, particularly at this time of life, I'm not, I'm not so easily destined to be hiring somebody that I don't know. I might sometimes, and I should, because it's always nice to play with other people. But Chicky, you want your comfort level. And sometimes things go wrong even with them, and like, why did he do that to me? And why did he blah, blah, blah? But still, you're like a dysfunctional family. I have different people that I like to use to emphasize different things. Like I have Boots Mallison, who has 5 strings. He remembers everything I played in 1980. He's got a beautiful sound. He's quick. He can read everything. And yet, my first bass player when I came to New York was Jay Linhart, who was very busy in the studios. Yeah. And he's going to be going to London. We're going to do the Blossom Fishburne show again. And he sings. So that adds another entertainment dimension. And now I have a twin act. Peter and Will Anderson, or Will and Peter Anderson, went through the Juilliard School program. I met them because one of my friends was the director of a theater, 59E59. He discovered them busking in Central Park and hired them to play one night a week at the bar of the theater. And from that, they're doing everything all over. They each play multi-reeds. They're smart. They're adorable. They're identical, but you can tell them a little bit apart. And I did an Artie Shaw program with them. That's how we got to know each other. And I sang we didn't talk about that, but I sang with Artie Shaw, but not in the 30s, even though it may sound that way, in the 80s. But what's fun is, first of all, they're so quick. Even if they know a lot of the old songs, they've been playing regularly with Vince Giordano and the Nighthawks, or David Ostwald, who's at Birdland playing Louis Armstrong. So they know the whole tradition, but they can do all sorts of things. They read. And so I love just the 3 of us, not even a bass, not even a drummer. And we'll be at Mesro on the 18th, June 18th. And we did something a month or so ago. And I'll give them the song. I'll indicate, sometimes I'll write out a little line for them to play once in a while. And sometimes we just wing it. And because they just have this, because they're exceptional musicians, but I think they just have this twinny thing. They must. It's extraordinary. And the way they play together. And it sounds like I'm singing with an orchestra. Awesome. And they're cute. They're actually over 30 now, and they're both fathers of now 2 children.
Wow.
So, but I love doing that, and it's so stimulating.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I make an observation that your father, who did get to hear you, must be very proud. He was proud, and he probably still is.
Oh, I hope so. He's up there. Just before he died, bless their hearts, the Arbor's people released a recording of live performances at my hometown jazz emporium, Chan's, through a few years when he was actually at his best on the trombone. And every time I'd come, I'd have Warren Vacher, or maybe Lauren Schoenberg, and some Joe Cohen, and all different people for him, Dan Barrett, and he loved that. And so it became an album, and it's still out there. On his birthday, the year after he died, I was playing in London, and there was a program at one of the record stores. They did concerts there. But I just looked up and I saw on the shelf of albums displayed my father's picture with the trombone on the front of the album. and I just melted. And I just, that's him up in heaven.
Well, I hope you have
Sing.
a wonderful gig this afternoon, and I'm going to put in a request for Once in a While.
Okay.
And I especially hope your
Thank
gig
you.
on Friday, which is your birthday, maybe you could play Happy Birthday in all 12 keys. See if anybody notices.
Oh, 12. I've never counted how many there are. I definitely avoid certain ones,
Yeah,
but thank you. I play it as safe as I can.
yeah.
I don't know. It's your fault. You're just so easy to talk with. You'd be so easy to talk with.
Hey, thank you for that.
Thank you. Come visit sometime.
All right, I'd love to see you live, and thanks a lot.
I'll keep in touch.
I'll just pause this and we'll say our goodbyes.